bringing Gator Nation a different Gator great every episode.
This is Jabbar Gaffney. You're listening to the All for the Gators podcast.
Hey, I'm Earl Everett. You're not a Gator, you're Gator bait.
This is Bo Carroll.
Hey, I'm Rita Anthony.
This is Kiwan Ratliff, and you are listening to All for the Gators podcast.
This is Cedric Faison, a.k.a. C4.
This is Brandon James.
This is Jack Jackson. Go Gators.
Hi, this is your boy Jeremy Mincy, a.k.a. Mr. Mintz, and we were the All for the Gators podcast.
This is Ben Trooper. You listening to the All for the Gators podcast.
Hey guys, this is Jarvis Moss. Go Gators.
You rocking with Lito Shepherd, and we're All for the Gators podcast, man. Top notch.
This is Chris Doring, and you're listening to the All for the Gators podcast.
And now, your Gator alumni hosts, John, Andy, and Sid.
Well. Welcome to the party, Sid.
Yes, our trio is a duo today.
Yeah, we're down one. Andy's wife, Kelly, it's her birthday. They're going out, and they're celebrating.
Happy birthday, Kelly.
That's right.
I was kind of thinking Andy would just bring Kelly on the show. What better way to celebrate your birthday than hanging out on the All for the Gators podcast? I mean,
I know. Who does he think he is?
Yeah, so.
Taking the night off.
Gosh. Well,
I'm going to replace him with Riedel.
Oh, watch out. He's going to get Wally pipped and not come back. That's no good.
I have replaced him with Riedel before on episodes.
We have?
Not tonight.
No, not tonight.
So, Sid, I was thinking, for people listening to the podcast right now, that maybe they just found us. This is the first time they're listening to the All for the Gators podcast. Why should they listen to us?
Well, first of all, welcome to the party. Officially, you are now friends of the show. Well, what they should expect is listening to us morons and usually another moron asking Gator legends great questions and geeking out
and some
about
not so great questions.
No, yeah. Yes, there's definitely some of those. I know. I like to participate in that portion of the show. Yes, yeah. but we do get a lot of great insight. A lot of good memory lane. Unfortunately, we haven't had so much Gator glory in the more recent years, so it is really nice to tap back into those times when it really was great to be a Florida Gator, and we.
That's right. Reminisce.
Yes.
Remember your favorites. Hear them again. Relive some of those moments. Find out things about those moments and relationships and times on the team that we weren't privy to, that They're letting us in on.
Some behind the
that's what our podcast is about.
Definitely.
Yeah, All for the Gators podcast. You can listen to the talking heads about how the season's going, how we did last game, how we're going to do next game.
We have none of that for you.
None of that here.
None of that here.
There's enough of those out there.
That's right.
We want the Gator greats on, and we want to have a good time with them and give that to Gator Nation, pretty much.
Yes.
So, that being said, I'm going to talk about the game last week, which I said we don't do.
We don't do that. We're breaking the rules.
No.
I thought we don't cross streams. That's bad.
No, well, here's the deal. I'm just going to talk about one moment of that game because I feel that moment is going to be an iconic moment for the University of Florida football team.
That might be an iconic moment for college football. Like that was like an inhuman move. That was like ridiculous.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
So instantly, yes. The catch of the century for anybody. Ridiculous.
Pretty Ricky.
Yes.
Pearsall.
Wow.
Just reaches out, leaps, reaching forward, one hand, backwards. Ball's going past him. I don't know how he gripped that ball. He might have had a magnet in his glove.
With defenders around him. It's not like he was open just doing sideline acrobatics
no, he was going to get
anything. Yeah.
He was going to get destroyed by two defenders coming straight from both sides.
Guts.
Makes the catch. Gets hammered, pops right back up, and I just feel that catch.
Onions.
And you've seen the photos online, right?
Oh.
It mirrors the Jumpman, right? Which is Michael Jordan's logo. I don't know. Are we allowed to say that? I don't know.
Uh-oh.
But it sort of does. If you were to take the shadow of it and put it next to it,
yes,
I feel that's going to be an iconic figure for a long time to come. So here's the deal. Was that the greatest catch in Florida Gator football history? I'm throwing it out there. Sid, tell me another catch that's better, another reception that's better in Florida Gator football history.
All right, so I went through the annals and doing my half-ass internet research, and apparently, the greatest catch by a Gator came by James Jones in 1982 against the University of Miami. And why this was a big deal was this was actually a winning score. And amazing. He was a fullback, which part of makes it all the more impressive. But he reached into the sky and pulled it down while falling backwards into the end zone against rival University of Miami with quarterback Jim Kelly. That I found was regarded as the top one, but an honorable mention, and I think this one's a lot of fun.
Okay.
Number 2 on the list that I saw was by Lee McGriff. You may recognize the last name.
Lee McGriff? Not even Travis?
He is the father of Travis McGriff. And what makes it even more fun is the amazing catch that was known as the leap. This is known as the leap for old-time Gators out there. All right? It was thrown by Don Gaffney. You may recognize that name. So this is a generational, in the 70s, we got some Gaffney to McGriff, and apparently this was one for the all-time greats. So unfortunately, this is not a video highlight show for us to roll the tape. But for our friends of the show out there, go check it out. And apparently, the 2 greatest catches in Florida history prior to what we just saw, apparently
I should have said modern day.
And modern day, okay. Modern day Cowboys out there dropping some Tesla.
No, well, I mean, we're talking Jabbar Gaffney, right, against Tennessee. Was it a catch? They said it was. We're talking Felipe Franks' bomb to beat Tennessee, right? Tyree Cleveland.
Kyle Pitts. From Trask against Ole Miss. That was a big catch against 2 defenders. Kyle Pitts, huge, great catch. That's more recent stuff.
Hilliard.
Oh, gosh.
Hilliard.
Big spot, too. That's nice. Yes.
So here's the deal. Those were probably in bigger games. I'll give it that.
Okay.
But I mean, even the vibe of Pearsall getting up was like, you felt it like, it's not a championship game. It's not going to set us up for a championship game. But it's like, you know what? It's putting some respect back on the Florida Gators. We're on our way up. You have to deal with us. We're going to do whatever it takes. And here we are. Right? That's what I felt. And I feel that's almost just as important as a catch in the championship game for the program right now.
That's free marketing right there, because they're showing that highlight all over the place, all over the country at all times. You want to see a catch, and you see the orange and blue, and maybe future friend of the show. Excellent out there.
All right, good stuff. Well, speaking of that Jabbar Gaffney catch, somebody that was there to see it was on the field, and he could be our guest today.
Oh, okay. So this is a more modern Gator coming on today.
Man, if you Google him, it's crazy what comes back. Different pictures from totally different careers. Some wild stories, too, that I hope we can get into. But first, he was a Gator for 6 seasons. From watching the 96 team capture that national championship as a redshirt freshman to Coach Spurrier's last season in 2001, he's out of Alachua, Florida. It's a part of the Gainesville area there. At Santa Fe High, he was regarded as one of the country's top 3 elite offensive linemen. 2-time first-team All-State, first-team All-American. He started his trophy collection early, capping off his high school career as a state weightlifting champion as a junior, putting up a measly 475 pounds, and then taking home the Wendy's High School Heisman in 95 as a senior. The homegrown strongman came to the Swamp in 96, and as a Gator played in 32 games, holding it down in the trenches for Freddie T, T-Jack, Terry Jackson, E.G. Ernest Graham, and of course some pass protection for Doug, Jesse, and Rex. Gator Nation, he's got a couple SEC championship rings and a big one from 96. 2001 first team All-SEC at offensive lineman, center, guard. It didn't matter. When he got healthy, he dominated that line of scrimmage. The man with the largest arms in the history of Florida Gator football, big, and I mean big number 74, Mr. Zachary Matthew. You know him as Zac Zedalis.
All right.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for that introduction. That does make me feel important, you know?
Well, you seem important when I Google you. So many different things come back, and hopefully we're going to touch on them. But let me ask you, did you ever get that confirmed, largest arms in the history of Gator football?
I don't know if that's actually confirmed or not. We never measured them. I think we've got... I'm sure there's some guys who had bigger arms than myself over the years, guys who played before me and during my time. But, it's guys like Jeff Mitchell, Donnie Young, all those guys had some big arms. Jason Odom. I don't know about Jason, but I know that some of the guys had some big arms. So, and like I said, those guys all played in the pros. I did not, so I don't think the arms got me very far.
Did you ever beat that mark, 475, as a max?
I did. In high school, I got 500 in high school, and then coming in as a freshman, I mean, the highest I ever got was my sophomore year, 98. I've been 630 at UF. But at my freshman year, I came in and benched, I think, like 5'10", 5'15".
Did you just say
That's
630?
just ridiculous.
I did.
Wow.
Believe me, you don't need that much to play, but I for some reason focus mainly on strength. But anyway, my freshman year, 5'15", we're in the weight room, bunch of freshmen working out with the coaches, and Donnie Young walks in. Now, Donnie Young, I know you guys probably know him. Obviously, he and Jeff Mitchell are probably on the all-century team.
Sure.
Great Gator football player. And he walks in, and the guy didn't lift weights. He didn't lift. I promise you. He's just a big country boy. Comes in with camouflage coveralls, camouflage hat, and he knows what we're doing. And he walks in and goes, "How much is that?" And they're like, "Oh, it's 515." Takes his hat off, sits on the bench, and does it twice without a warm up.
Oh my God!
So I was really from the moment I got there, I was like, "Oh, I'm not as good as I thought I was." So,
that's serious business.
And he didn't even train. So yeah, he was a beast.
Just country strong.
Oh yeah.
When you're banging and clanging in the gym at UF, what's a beast like you listening to in your headphones?
Oh, we don't have headphones at there. We had the radio going.
Okay.
And it was whatever music pretty much the upperclassmen wanted to put on. And I never ever asked I never asked to put anything on, but I think sometimes like in high school we listened to, classic rock. We'd have days where it was we'd have rap music. There was days that it was classic rock, and there was never a country day. It was just, rap or classic rock.
Nice.
And so the strength coaches and then whoever the upperclassmen were, they got to decide. They got to to kind of decide. I remember one time lifting with Ron Forbes, and there was a song on that I don't think I liked it too much. I said, "Ron, man," he's a strength coach of ours. I go, "Ron, can we get different music in here?" And then Ron just turned to me and said, "The music needs to be in your head." And I was like, "Oh, all right, man. Okay, let's okay, all right, David Goggins.
That's some Obi-Wan stuff right there."
I never played. I didn't know if he had music playing in his head or not, but Ron was a pretty good guy, so I took that as shut up and just lift weights.
You're a Gainesville guy. Did you ever listen to Rock 104?
All the time.
Did you listen to the morning show? Ever listen to the morning show?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I say that because I co-hosted the morning show on Rock 104.
Did you really?
Yeah, there. It was Todd and Spano in the morning, and I'm just waiting for one of our guests to go, "Hey, I remember you," but yeah, it doesn't happen.
I did the 2 to 6 a.m. on that show, on that station as well. So the overnights, but only the insomniacs and real drunks heard me.
No, I guarantee we definitely heard it. But obviously, you're listening for the music. You don't really hear anything else.
Sure.
We're 18, 20-year-old kids, so who knows what we were thinking about.
Obviously, we're talking, you're a big guy, all these accolades. What other colleges were you considering prior to landing in Gainesville, or were you always destined to be a Gator?
Well, I committed to Florida really early. So I know people commit 2 or 3 years early now, and they offer scholarships. But I graduated in 96, but I committed in 95. I think like September of 95. And I would say every Division I school recruited me. I hate to say that, but everybody except for Mississippi State. Mississippi State said I was too small. And they had some big boys. And I committed early and didn't take any visits. And mainly because, where I played in high school at Santa Fe, Wiley Rich, who played for the University of Florida years before me, but he was there when I got there as a freshman. And I had 2 years with him. But another guy by the name of Doug Forrester played at Santa Fe, and he's the best lineman that ever came out of Santa Fe, and hands down. He had the flexibility, he had all these things that he would have been an NFL guy. Long story short, as he committed, Ron Zook was our recruiting coach. I was a sophomore, he was a senior. He commits to Florida, and his brothers went on academic scholarships to the University of Auburn. And he'd go visit his brothers and hunt with them. And he had an Auburn hunting hat, like camouflage, but it had the University of Auburn. And Spurrier was speaking at a touchdown club, and they asked him, "Hey, you guys got Forrester locked down at a local a local Gator club?" And they're like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, Forrester's coming to us." And they said, "Well, then why is he wearing an Auburn hat?" And that created, and this is not a joke, Spurrier was like, "You're either all for the Gators or you're not." And him wearing that hat, not even giving him a chance to explain, told Zook to call him and cut him. Done. And I was at his house.
Wow.
I was at his
Talk about a wardrobe malfunction.
Oh, I know.
Ouch.
And he had two cousins who were twins who played for the Gators in the 70s. Dennis and David Forrester. They played for the Gators. So he always wanted to be a Gator. And I tell you what, they took it from him, and and he ended up going to Auburn. But not because he wanted to, because he really wanted to play for Florida. So that really, that kind of messed him up. And I saw that. I was like, man, I'm not letting that happen. And, Florida at the time, 95 when they played, I had it down to two teams. I had it down in Nebraska and Florida. And then, Nebraska completely obliterated Florida. And I'd already committed. And I remember sitting there with my dad, and he's like, you sure you want to go to Florida? I'm like, yeah, I do, because they're going to get this thing right. And they, I want to go there. But, Nebraska was, those guys, that 1995 Nebraska team could have beaten NFL teams at that time. Those guys were
they were really good.
I believe that's the best college football team ever created. Seriously, better than any Florida team. That was the best football team ever created.
Yeah, we've heard stories from a lot of our guests that were on that team that said they were just at a different level, a different breed of strength that they've never seen before, which made them work that much harder in the off season and all that to get ready to gear up for 96. But I can't think of exactly who said what, but I know we've had a lot of those comments on here from those guys.
Well, I know Bo Carroll mentioned that. He said, obviously when we came in as freshmen, it was all business because of what happened, the embarrassment that happened in 95. But you got to realize those guys are really, really good. And I'm not going to throw anything towards them or make any accusation, but they were chemically enhanced. Let's just put it that way. These guys were chemically enhanced. Sure. if you saw the program with they were all wearing like Nebraska collared red shirts, and their necks were bigger than my waist. These guys were monsters.
Yeah. So that redshirt freshman year in 96, what was the level of competition like on the scout team for you?
When I came in 96, I was kind of penciled in to start. So I came in January as a true freshman because I was strong, and I was strong and I was big. And I'd been around, and so I came in as the only lineman that class. There was another transfer named Todd Holland who transferred from LSU, but I came in as a freshman. I was supposed to start. Jimmy Ray Stevens has his arm around my shoulder, walking out to the first practice, like, "Oh, Zach, man, you're going to start. We're going to beat out Ryan Kalick at left guard. You're going to start." And then we went to 7-on-7 run offense. Did pretty well in the run offense, held my own, and then we went to pass blocking, which. Even though we did it at high school, we never did it this way in high school. And we went to pass pro, which is basically one-on-one blocking. So the defensive lineman knows it's pass, and you have a single lane, and you have to block this defensive lineman. And so my first experience with that was Ed Chester, who lined up in front of me. And what happens is that you get the snap count as an offensive player, and then the defense has their back to who's giving the snap count. And so they snap the ball, and you go one-on-one, pass pro, and you stay within this lane. And they snapped the ball, and I looked, and Ed Chester wasn't there. I was like, "Where'd he go?" He was already past me, tackling the dummy. And I was like, "Oh, let's do this again." Did it again, and he did the same thing. I didn't see him, and Ed was this guy that we called him Rubber Man, because you could punch him in the chest, and he could like morph his body and then swim and rip right past you. And he was such a good player. And so I went from Coach Stevens telling me I was going to start to walking from practice that day. Coach Stevens said, "Well, I guess you're going to be redshirted." So that was the end of my practice, all in one day. And I can thank Ed Chester for that. But being on the scout team, it was like anything else. We're going through blocking schemes. You're trying to work on your technique. You're going against the first team defense. You're trying to, even though these guys were good, you're trying not to try too hard because then you make them look bad. If you make them look bad, Chris, these guys could crush you, especially as a freshman. But at the same time, no one's trying to get beat up. No one's trying to get hurt. So there were moments of intensity. But there's also moments of, hey man, let off, freshman. We know what we're doing. Don't try to be a scout team hero out here. So it was just kind of balancing that up. But I did have a lot of fun with like McDonald Ferguson and some of the D linemen because I didn't wear gloves my freshman year. And so when I would put my hand down on the ground as a guard, so when the defensive linemen read your hand, if your knuckles are white, they think you're leaning forward. So they think it's a run. So they'd say heavy, heavy, heavy. So I would purposely on a pass play push my hand down in the ground so it looked white, and they'd be like heavy, 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 and then it'd be a pass. And then Coach Broadway, the defensive line coach at the time, would come in and cuss out the defensive lineman who said heavy because they were mad. And they were like, "What?" And so I had a fun time doing that. But needless to say, they didn't last long because then they caught on to it and they told me to stop.
Did you ever get in trouble for being a scout team hero or getting a predicament?
No, I was pretty, I gave effort and I knew when to hold up and when not. Not that I didn't give them a good look, but I knew that, we were going to block them to a degree and then let them get their reads and their zones. And you got to realize that 3 or 4, Coach Spurrier ran camp very much like a pro team. And when I say that, he gave a lot of responsibility. He treated us like professionals. He wasn't like buddy, rah coach. We hit on Tuesdays and we hit a little bit on Wednesdays. And that was the only time he really, really hit. And so, there's certain plays that has to be, you have to be pretty intense for those. But usually towards halfway through the season, people are beat up. You want to keep people healthy. There's no point in. So, I did a good job, I thought, of trying to kind of mitigate. Yeah. I wasn't, and I wasn't going to be a scout team hero. I mean, I think I was depressed because I was on the scout team. I was like, I had nobody else who was in my class, so I didn't know who to lean on. I was just by myself, and so the other linemen, I didn't drink, I didn't go out, and so I was supposed to come in and take Caleb's job, and they knew that, and so when I didn't, that was kind of like I wasn't in the club at the time. Sure, I was a freshman.
If there was a transfer portal, would you have been gone to Nebraska?
No.
No, okay.
No, I didn't. I remember going to my dad, and I think Pearson said the same thing the first day of practice. I remember going to my dad saying, "Hey," I think he called his brother and said, "Man, I don't think I'm going to make it." I remember going to my dad saying, "Man, Dad, I don't know if I'm good. I think I'm just, I think I'm real strong, but I don't have any technique." And he said, "Just quit." I was like, "Just quit? What are you talking about? Just quit? I'm not going to quit." So I don't know if it was a mind game he played on me, but I mean, of course I couldn't quit. I just had to get better.
And you did.
Oh, I got a little better.
Yeah. Well, next season you get into the action. You play in 9 games. Get your start against Auburn at home. Do you remember what that was like, running out on the swamp as a starter for the first time?
I do. I think the first start was actually Auburn away. It wasn't actually at home. It was an away game. Yeah, I remember the start. Auburn was decent. They had a really good linebacker named Takeo Spikes, who played in the league for a while. Great linebacker.
Yes.
Yep.
Talk about strong guys.
Oh, he was just a monster. He was great. And I think that the best thing about Florida that I remember was that Coach Spurrier and this coaching staff were fair, at least in my observation, is that if the first guy messed up, if the starter messed up, the second guy got a shot. And so we had a guy in front of us who, Cheston Blackshear, who had a bad game prior to, and they allowed me to start. And then, I started the Auburn game, and then we played Georgia, and then Chester was starting after Georgia. So, because I messed up, I gave up 2 pressures like in 2 plays, and it was like that was all she wrote for that moment in the Georgia game. And the bad part about that is Coach Spurrier has a memory like a steel trap. So even though the next year, 98, I started every single game, played really, really well, Coach benched me for the Georgia game just because I gave up 2 pressures the year before.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks, Coach. Appreciate that." So I just knew not to mess up. You just can't mess up. You got to make sure every single play is your best, and you never know when that he's gonna be watching, and you just got to play every play to the best of your ability. And to be honest, I wasn't as good as these guys, Jeff Mitchell and Donnie Young and these guys and Kenyatta Walker. These guys were studs, and I was really strong, but I wasn't the best technician, so I really needed to not mess up.
What's it like having such a small margin for error then? I mean, that's got to be like high anxiety. You're stressing out, like I can't mess up, I got to do this, or is it the opposite and you're driven to do well to motivate you to stay on the field and keep the next guy on the bench a little longer?
You just deal with it. I mean, I didn't really think of anxiety back then. I think that you just make sure that every play you're doing your best, and then if you mess up, that's one thing about linemen usually is that you don't need to yell and scream at us usually because we're doing our best. It's not like we're out there to really screw up, and so you just got to make sure that that your technique is right, and if you do mess up, you know how to fix it. And I think eventually, as I became a junior and things started rolling, I think that coaches trust you a little bit more, and then they kind of maybe one of those, he was teaching me a lesson. I don't know. I never came off, I don't think, as arrogant or that I had it in the bag. I never thought that way. Any season, any preseason, I never came in thinking that I was going to be the starter. I knew I always had to work at it. There was always somebody there to take your spot. These other guys that you're interviewing, these guys, Pearson was incredible. He was a great player. These other linemen as well were great, and so they may have not had to deal with the same thing, but I knew I was always looking over my shoulder.
Well, I know Doug had to deal with it, right?
Well, see, and here's the deal:
short hook there.
You've got people who will they'll deal with Coach Spurrier differently than other players. So I put people like Danny Werfel is in his league on his own. I mean, he was somebody that Spurrier still yelled at. I mean, I still heard stories. I mean, he was there my freshman year, but I still heard stories in '94 by Travis McGriff and those guys who I roomed with. They told me stories about Danny, but he's kind of in his own element there. But the other guys like Doug and Rex and Terry Dean all dealt with Spurrier the same way. And then you've got guys like Jesse Palmer, Brock Berlin, Timmy Olmstead. Those guys dealt with Spurrier in a different way. And when I say that is that, and I'm not knocking any way they dealt with him, but Rex and Doug, and I didn't play with Terry, but I can imagine Terry was like this. When Spurrier was screaming and yelling on the sidelines, and you could hear him yelling, those guys would be like, you know what, man, let's just go to work. Let's go to work. They wouldn't say the heck with this guy, but they say, let's go to work. Let's get this play run. Jesse and Brock, you could tell it bothered them. It bothered them a little bit. Not that they were soft or not that they couldn't handle it, but you could tell that they were like, oh man, I gotta hear this guy yell at me, and I gotta deal with this. And I think it added some pressure to them. And they may tell you different, but from my perspective, I definitely saw that it bothered them a little bit. And so, you just got two different animals there, how they handle things. And one's right. I mean, no one's right, no one's wrong. It's just the way people deal with stuff.
So did Spurrier deal? It sounds like Spurrier broad brushed it with how he coached. Did you ever see him deal with individual players differently for that reason? Because different players may take his coaching differently, or was he just, the old ball coach to everybody on the team?
He stayed pretty consistent. I see. And another thing, I wasn't in the meeting rooms all the time with the receivers and quarterbacks. I was usually we'd have a group meeting together once a week, maybe twice a week when we watch film or depending on certain games that are coming up. And he treated everybody pretty much equally then. But I think, individually, no one was safe. I mean, no matter who you were, you're not safe. If you mess up, and he's going to be on you, especially if you're not doing the right thing. So a broad brush, I don't know if, to me, he did, but there may have been other incidences that I didn't know about and other players, how he dealt with them. But to me, he was who he was to everybody. And that's even going up to, he called Bill Clinton Billy in D.C. You're walking through the Secret Service and you got hey, Mr. President, hey, Mr. President, hey, Mr. Hey, Billy, how you doing now? How you doing? What's going on up here? That's called President Clinton Billy. And he had his grandson came out to practice one day. His grandson was trying to play quarterback. And he's like, yeah, it's my grandson, Scotty, and he wants to play quarterback. Not very good, but he wants to play quarterback.
He said that right in front of him?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Ouch.
And he wasn't. And the thing is, people take that as, oh man, he was a jerk. He wasn't a jerk. He just he was genuine with who he was.
He's just real.
and so he's sarcastic. And he would say numerous times, if you messed up, he'd be like, oh no, it's not your fault. It's just our dumbass coaches. We just can't coach you. And it was just this sarcasm that he was still insulting you by just but by saying, oh, it's the coaches, we just can't coach him up, he's just, we can't do it. So so you just knew that if he's not going to give his own grandson a break, then sure. I'm not asking for it.
You definitely got to earn it. That's right. So Unfortunately, we can't go over your Gator career without some of the injuries there. Obviously, the big knee injury in the beginning of '99 against Western Michigan, and makes you miss pretty much all of the next 2 seasons while you're recovering. What was that like to have to rebuild and work your way all the way back? And how do you recall overcoming those injuries and exceeding your previous performance when you did come back?
I was never the same player after that injury, ever. And mentally, physically, I was fine, but mentally, I never was the same. And I think that looking back on that, I definitely think personality-wise, that definitely changed me. There were some dark times. And the reason why it got so dark is because when I got injured initially, it was an MCL sprain, is what they initially, labeled it as. And so it was against Western Michigan. We had Central Florida next, and then we played Tennessee. So the whole goal was, hey, let's give him an MRI. And we didn't do an X-ray, just did an MRI. And let's get him rehabbed for Tennessee. So, basically they thought, hey, it's an MCL, there's scar tissue, we need to break the scar tissue up. So they put me on a Biodex machine, which is a machine that force bends your knee. So the rehab person, myself, or the training staff were bending my knee. And I'm like, listen, guys, it does not feel right. It doesn't feel right. And this is, I hadn't been hurt before. I've been like the Iron Man for, from high school to here. And so I was like, this doesn't feel right. And they're like, no, they're saying all the things that motivate you, like heart of a gerbil and, 80-year-old women tougher than you. So, all those great things that you hear whenever you're trying to get motivated. And so, fast forward 8 weeks and my knee is now calcified and my leg won't even straighten out. Oh, man. And so they do an X-ray and they pull me in a room by myself and they're like, hey, we messed up. You had an avulsion fracture, which is basically the ligament, the MCL tore away from a piece of the MCL tore a piece of bone away. So I had a broken leg. Oh my gosh. And so it's like, hey, sorry, and nothing was done on purpose. It wasn't on purpose. No one tried to do this. It was just one of those things that they just missed it. Yeah. But those 8 weeks of, and this is before social media and before cell phones, but I was getting calls on my apartment phone, and we used to have answer machines, and there were fans. Oh man, they would rip me. You're soft. You're a they F on me, and then when I'd walk out on the field, people would boo who were behind the bench. They'd boo. Oh, boo! You're a loser. You're soft. And I was like, man. And they didn't know the story. They didn't know. And of course, I was hoping that there would be like somebody in our our coaching staff or somebody would come forward and say, hey, listen, we messed up. That didn't happen. Obviously, they don't want to admit that. And so, it definitely changed my personality because really quickly as a young man, I figured out, because once you're hurt and you're not really giving to the program, they got to go on, man. I mean, the team goes on, the season goes on, and you're not going to stop for you. And I realized that at a young age that, hey, I'm expendable. And I already knew I was expendable, but then I really found out that how expendable I was. And I think, and I'm not, it's not a pity thing. It's the fact that that's life. I mean, that's life, man. I mean, people will go on and whether you die or whether you're out of the game, life will go on. This is going to continue on. The sun will come up tomorrow. And you just got to realize that, hey, you got to do everything you can while you have it. And when it's gone, then you had a good ride and you go out. So when I came back, it was 2 years of rehab. I think after we did the X-ray, then we did a scope on the knee, and then I came back and I played. That actually, what the thing is with that last senior season, I was out for 2 years. I didn't think I was going to get any eligibility. I was done. I packed it up. I lost like 70 pounds. I was going to try to be a strength coach. And I remember getting a call. I was about to go talk to Coach Franks, who was an old running backs coach for us. He was coaching at Duke. I was going to talk to him about being a strength coach at Duke. And I was in Durham, and I remember getting a call from one of our assistant athletic directors, and he's like, hey, NCAA granted you a 6-year. Do you want to come back? And I was like, I mean, who says no to that? I was like, sure, let's come back. And then I get on the scale, and I'm like 235. I'm like, uh-oh, I gotta gain some weight. So basically my senior year, I was probably the fattest I've ever been because I had to gain that weight fast, and it just was it was a good year, and we really had a great team. And unfortunately, with 9/11 happening, we didn't play Tennessee early. Yeah, we played them late, and then got beat in December, and by a really great Tennessee team. But I think that it would have been a different story maybe if 9/11 didn't happen. We could have played them earlier, because Tennessee was known for back then really struggling early, and then really starting and finishing strong. If we could have got them early in the season, maybe we could have beat them. But hey, wasn't meant to be.
We've had a lot of guests on the show who were on that 2001 team with you, and they all, you hear the unfinished business and the regret of that Tennessee game is like the one that got away.
Did you ever have a moment when you were rehabbing your knee and being harassed and stuff like that, where maybe you didn't think it was worth it? Maybe wanted to leave the team? Did you ever have a moment like that?
No, I never had a moment like that. I didn't feel like I was a part of the team anyway, because I basically, I was. And see, here's the thing: is that I made some mistakes in my career. I feel like my career really was kind of, in my opinion, was a failure, because I didn't. Out of things out of my control, some of them were, but some were in my control. Like when I was hurt, what I should have done was I should have spent more time going to meetings. I should have been a part of the team, and I kind of shied away. I was kind of like, I was embarrassed. I was, I kind of felt like I was, it was a tough time. I really felt like I wasn't a part of the team, and they didn't need me. And what good is going to meetings wherein, that's obviously immaturity. That's being young.
You're just a kid,
But now
that's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, but but at the same time, now I wish I would have stayed. I could have stuck there, watched the film. Kind of at least gotten mentally better at that point, at least been around. But when you're on, they call it Muscle Beach. When you're hurt, you train during practice, and so you're out there lifting weights, and you're out there. Of course, I couldn't lift. I mean, I could lift, but I couldn't do anything with my legs. So I was like riding this bike, and they try to make it miserable for you. So if you are faking, which I never faked, but if you're faking an injury, and they put you on Muscle Beach, it's supposed to be really difficult. So you're like, I really want to go back to practice because this is awful. And so, sitting on Muscle Beach and riding a bike while you watch, your teammates practice, it's like it's like you're there, but you're behind this glass wall and you can't get out. And people look over at you like, man, and so, and they didn't have the information either. But it was tough, and clearly I think that as I've gotten older, I've kind of realized that. But at the same time, when you're in it, you just kind of deal with what you have, and that's what I did. But I was never going to quit. That never crossed my mind.
We thank you for that, and clearly it did all come together in that 2001 season, as you alluded to. Unfortunately, Coach Spurrier's infamous last season, but you had yourself quite a year though. First team All SEC. And you were blocking for a guy who these two Florida Gators personally feel was robbed of a Heisman opportunity and a possible national championship. What do you take away from that, the culmination of all that, getting that 6th year in, those 2 years working back? What do you look back on from that season? Is there a particular play or memory from your days as Gator that stand out with more than others?
When you're there for 6 years, you kind of span 2 different classes. So you come in with the guys who are older than you, and then you're there through the people who were with you. And then I got to see the people like Pearson's. I mean, they were there, but to really know Pearson and Brock and Rex and David Jorgensen and Todd Johnson and Aaron Walker, and I got to kind of see the younger guys so I kind of spanned through everybody. I was like the old man on the team, even though I was young. I felt like I was the old man. And so I think that, you take those memories, you take those friendships, you take, those losses and that year. I mean, it was great that, All SEC was a phenomenal honor. The funny thing, you don't know this is, and I'm not saying this to brag, I'm the only fourth team, which they don't make a 4th team, but they had a 4th team. I was in the 4th team All-American team, because back then that's when these sports announcers would vote. And some poor guy took pity on me, I'm sure. It's like, oh, you know what? I like that guy. Let's put him on an All-American team. So I'm like the 4th team All-American.
Mick Hubert voted for you?
Maybe it was Mick. I don't know if it was Mick. I don't know if Mick liked me back then, but I know I'm the 4th team, and no one else is on the team. It's just me. It's like, hey, I'm 4th team.
Wow, I'm the team of one.
So it's kind of like this consolation. It's like getting a ribbon. It's like getting that 6th place trophy. Like, oh, he participated in the football season, so let's give him this ribbon. So, it was funny. I always kind of carried that and said, oh, yeah, I'm an All-American. 4th team, baby. 4th team.
Very nice. We had Mike on. I'm sure you heard the show.
I did.
And he told us the story about the water bucket prank on you in the hotel. And, it was a funny story, but when I think about it, I need to know how that ends because I don't see a wet, jacked up Zac Zedalis going to bed quietly after that. So how does that end after you get the second bucket of water thrown on you? Does the door come down?
I listen to that too, and I don't I don't know if he's accurate on that because I don't recall it. I'm not saying he's lying about it. I don't recall it. But I know that I probably at that moment in time, after going through my dark period and probably being as angry as I was, I don't know if anybody would have been safe if that would have really happened. Because we had a guy. I mean, we had a guy in who was a D lineman. He came in. I'm not going to mention any names. He came in as a freshman. He was highly touted. Came from Jacksonville, and I actually was going to say his name, but I don't even know his name. I can't remember his name. I know his first name was Ernest. And he came in, and we're in I guess summer practices. So we're doing 6 a.m. runs, and we're doing this thing called County Fair where we go different stations. And we were doing a drill. They were going, doing a drill that you had to finish through the line. And this guy was. He kept quitting before he finished the line. Like he'd finish the drill, but he'd kind of coast through the line. And Rob Glass, our strength coach, was like, "Hey, you got to finish this drill," and he kept loafing. So Rob Glass said, "We're going to keep running. We're going to keep running this group until you finish." And he mouthed off to the coach. He didn't finish, and he mouthed off to the coach. And I remember going over there, and I assaulted the guy, man. I punched him right in the throat and knocked him down, and said, I said some choice words for him. And I didn't even worry about getting in trouble. Like I wasn't even concerned because we're a bunch of animals out there. And so he left. He left the field, and he was like, he ended up quitting the team. I remember Buddy Tevens, who rest in peace. He just passed away. Mm-hmm. Buddy Tevens come up to me like the next day, said, "Hey man, you he was a nice guy too. He's like, you punched Ernest, huh?" I was like, yes sir, I did. He's like, he quit. Good job. And so I was like, oh, cool. So I was like, all right, that's cool.
You weeded out the weak.
I'm not condoning that behavior, but what I'm saying is that at that moment in my life, I mean, it was angry Zach for a while. Yeah. So I don't know if Pearson and them guys got away with 2 buckets. If they did, and I'm not saying he's lying, I probably beat on their hotel room door for a long time until they decided not to let me in because I probably couldn't break the door down. But yeah, I'm probably calmed down after that, and then it was probably funny the next day. But probably for the first 15, 20 minutes, it was not funny.
Well, I have a question. You mentioned earlier off air that you had a story from our high school classmate, NFL Hall of Famer Steve Hutchinson, who won a national championship with Michigan, went on to great success in the NFL. Is this a good time for you to tell us the story about our friend Steve?
Absolutely. Yes. Steve was a stud, as you know.
Yes.
And so we were on the Florida-Georgia All-Star team together. So we graduated the same year. We're on the Florida-Georgia All-Star team. We had practice, and Steve came in a day late. And I remember I think it was me, Cedric Bell was a D tackle. I think Cedric played for Florida State. And maybe I'm mistaken by that, but we were pretty big guys. I mean, I was strong. I mean, I felt like I was pretty big, and even though I was supposed to be a fullback because I have a smaller frame, I felt like I was manly, at 18 years old. And so I'm in the locker room and I'm changing. Steve walks in. This is 18-year-old Steve, and that guy Doug Forrester I talked about. This is what Steve was like, probably times 5. His wrists and his hands and his body. He was chiseled. He was just he was a man. He was a man at 18. And I remember looking at him going, oh, well, I thought I was a man, but that clearly that guy right there is a man.
He was a man at 10.
He was what?
He was ridiculous.
Yes.
He was a stud. He didn't say much because we didn't know each other. Mm-hmm. He didn't say much, and I don't remember, what he did during that game. We were offensive linemen. But I just remember, saying that guy's got, he is built to be an O-lineman, and clearly, I mean, I followed his career. What a great player! And I don't know him personally, but I hear he's a great family guy. I hear he's just a spectacular person, human being, and so I'm so glad that he had the career that he did. I hope his body feels good now. But he was just a complete stud, and so once again humbled. And my whole life is full of just being humbled every single day around these studs. But he was definitely one of those guys that I came in thinking I was something, and I saw him, was like, well, there goes that thought.
Yeah, he married his high school sweetheart, and they're still together.
Good for him. Yes. That's awesome.
So, looking back on your Gator career before we move on to what you've been doing since, and I like to ask this question to our guests, do you have a favorite Gator memory or a play that sticks with you in your mind when you're reminiscing or telling stories to family or friends?
There's a lot of, when I say bad things that are funny, all the good plays were supposed to happen, so you don't really remember them that much. I mean, I remember snapping the ball over Doug's head. That was a terrible memory. I remember all the bad stuff.
Sure.
I remember being in a game with Wiley Rich was a center in '97, and we were playing Arkansas, and Arkansas had a phenomenal D-line. And I remember Wiley begging with Jesse Palmer to go on three, because a three snap count would make me kind of jump back, a hut, and then a hut. So it would make the D lineman jump because they were teeing off on Jesse's cadence. And I remember Wiley begging him to go on three. And it's just those funny moments. I mean, moments like, I think right before I got benched in '98 for the Georgia game because I messed up in my redshirt freshman year. I remember the defensive lineman guy. I can't remember who he was, but he was just a giant guy, and he pushed me back like a foot. So I locked him out, pushed me back a foot. I remember watching tape, and Spurrier like zooming in on it, going, "He's not supposed to push you back." I'm like, "He pushed me back a foot. He's like 330 pounds, man. I did a pretty good job. He didn't make the play. I mean, it was stuff like that. I mean." Little things like that. I mean, little things in the locker room that I'm like going through my mind and self-governing to see what I can say and what I cannot say. Little idiosyncrasies and funny things that happen, during the season. I mean, there's so many things from, Coach Dwayne Dixon's speech before the Georgia game where we got beat in '97, which was the worst speech ever in any coaching's history. No one's told this story, I'm sure. I'm not going to get into it, but he started the speech with the Georgia Bulldog goes down to the St. Johns River. And then, I don't know, how the story goes from that to, and seriously, this is how the story went, that a chain came out of the river and then wrapped around the Georgia Bulldog's neck, and we were and he kept saying, clank, clank, and it chokes the Bulldog, clank, and it chokes the Bulldog. And it was so bad that Travis McGriff and I went in the bathroom. This is at the Jacksonville Stadium. This is up at in the stadium. We were in the bathroom laughing. So we're all walking out to the field after this. It got to the point where before we walked out of the field, while he's giving the speech, Coach Spurrier stepped in and was like, all right, Coach D, that's enough. That's enough. And so he kept saying clank, clank, and we go and get beat by Georgia. One of the worst performances that we have, '97. I gave up 2 pressures and we were terrible. I was terrible. I can't speak for anybody else. And we're on the bus on the way home, and someone said, "We got clanked." And we ran stadiums that next morning. So we got off the bus. It would probably be 11, 12 o'clock. We were at the stadium at 6 o'clock running stadiums after that game. And so, but memories, it's funny now. I mean, I'm not knocking Coach Dixon. He's a Santa Fe boy as well. He went to Santa Fe High School as well. But, I'm not knocking that. But just little things like that. There's so many different memories that are funny, that are also tragic at the same time. I remember like it was yesterday, though, walking off that field after that Tennessee loss. And it wasn't supposed to be that way, but it was. But those are the things that I remember. I mean, obviously, a lot of good things as well, but I usually gravitate towards the negative for some reason. So, I'm a real good guy to talk to. I'm sure I'm pepping everybody up for their life journey.
Well, you have accomplished a lot. I mean, past your football days, we'll get into that a little bit. You became an Alachua County sheriff. Member of the SWAT team and detective.
Wow.
Number one, how did you get into that profession? Number two, you got to have a crazy SWAT team story for us.
Well, I do. Actually, I got in that profession because I went rehab therapy and exercise sports science with my degree, even though it says something else on the internet, which is not true. But anyway, I got a degree in that, and I went and worked for the guy who actually rehabbed my knee from Florida. His name was Randy Brower, and he had he's a neuromuscular therapist and physical therapist, and I went and worked for him after I graduated, and, was making great money. I was his apprentice. I was learning so much, and then his wife, died of terminal cancer, And so it changed our relationship, and I was no longer really learning. So I was like, I really like helping people. What else can I do? My dad's a 35-year investigator. He did 35 years with the state, 7 at the Alaska County Sheriff's Office. My mom, government employee as well, taught school for 45 years. My stepmom's a law professor about to, basically retire 25 years at University of Florida and as a law professor. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to get into law enforcement. So I went to the academy, still worked and did, so I did my clients from 6 a.m. to 12, went to the academy from 1 p.m. to 10 o'clock at night. And, about 3 or 4 weeks, ASO picked me up and hired me. And then after I finished the academy, I came in and worked on the road. And I was really fortunate. And this has been kind of my luck throughout my life. I had a great high school coach who championed me and taught me the ropes. Coach Spurrier, Coach Stevens taught me at UF. I had guys like Donnie Young and Jeff Mitchell to watch and emulate. And then when I got to the sheriff's office, I had the same thing. I had really great guys who taught me, who were just the cream of the crop, who've been trained by the feds, and then I was working for them. And so I just was able to help more people. And my goal was always to come back to Gainesville and help, after the NFL, and that was my goal, but clearly I got hurt, didn't happen. So I figured I had to give back in some way, and I tried to do it in law enforcement. And I didn't become a cop because I wanted to drive fast or shoot guns. I really became a cop to help people. And I thought I did a good job. I worked all the neighborhoods I worked in. No one looked like me in the neighborhoods. And so to be able to build rapport with people and to talk and to really be trusted by anybody as a cop, it was something that I really held dear. And then becoming a homicide detective, it was great because all those relationships then then really helped out in the long run. Whenever people would obviously commit homicides, they would tell you about it, and they would give me information, and we helped solve some of those homicides because of those relationships. And that's just really, I felt like I was helping the community out so much. And then on the SWAT team, being a homicide investigator and on SWAT at the same time, they do not match up because you've got hammers and you've got investigators, and hammers, everything looks like a nail to a hammer. So as a SWAT team operator, there are some great things and great operators, but they're not there to investigate. They're there to solve, they're there to take care of the problem at hand. And when I say any crazy stories, is that we were clearing a house on a secondary search. So we did a search warrant on a drug house, and another guy and myself were doing a secondary search. So the first search was done, and we're going back through different rooms just to make sure there's nobody else in the house if we find any weapons. And we came into a room, and there was a 12-year-old kid, and he had a shotgun pointed at us.
Oh my gosh!
And I didn't know he was 12 at the time. He's just like a young man.
Mm-hmm.
And my buddy raised his rifle and my first thought, I dropped my gun and I said, son, you better put that damn gun down. Don't point that gun at us. And I yelled at him, and he put it down, thank God. And we were in the APC, the armored personnel carrier after the incident. And my buddy was like, hey man, I had all the slack pulled out of my trigger, man. I was going to shoot that kid. And I said, you would have been justified. I go, but thank God we didn't have to do that. And so thank God that didn't happen. But it's just one of those things where, you just, those moments happen. And thank God we didn't do that, but we could have. Could have easily done it. And then there was another time we were in the APC. We were at someone was suicidal, and I was outside the APC, and I kept hearing these ping, ping. And I was like, man, what is that? And some of the guys who they're like, hey, moron, get back in. They're shooting at us. It's like, oh, they're shooting at us. All right, let me get back in here. This is probably a smart idea to me to get out. And it was so funny because I would get so nervous before games. I'd be nervous before all games. I want to do well. And then on SWAT search warrants, when it was really life and death, I'm not saying this to brag, I never got nervous. It was one of those things where it was calm. And even during games, once that first initial play was over with, as a center, I couldn't get nervous anymore. I had to really focus on what had to be done. So once that initial play was over with, it seemed like everything slowed down and you could concentrate and focus. And it seemed like the only time it was on the football field and in those SWAT search warrants that I was ever really just calm, where I could just slow down and life kind of stopped and you kind of move slowly. And where everything else in life is just like fast, 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 go, go, go. And the way I talk, I'm sure I speed through my talking, but it's just the way my mind works. And I just was, I had a good time on SWAT. I had a great time playing too. So.
that's really interesting how like football almost prepared for that transition. There's definitely some overlap there in the training and the discipline and the camaraderie of working as a unit and stuff like that. So that's kind of interesting how that played out for you.
But you know what's Sid, the funny part about that is every time on SWAT you'd have, hey man, hey guy, hey Zach, it's just like football. I'm like, no, it's not just like football. When you're gonna clear this room with a gun, it's just like football. I'm like, no, nothing like football. But I understand what you're trying to do, but it's nothing like football. So quit trying to relate everything to me as football, because that's not. I'm not just a football player. So it was just always funny when they all would say that. I'm like, that's not okay. Whatever.
Man, we almost crossed over to true crime. I think that's the #1 podcast genre here.
I heard that.
So I actually moved back to Gainesville after I graduated in 2000. Moved back to South Florida, and then I got married, had a couple kids, and in 2016 we moved back to Gainesville, and I see these signs everywhere: Zedalis for sheriff or something like that, right? All over. And I was telling my wife, I'm like, I know, he played for the Gators. She wasn't that interested, but I was excited to see your name. I wasn't one of those guys calling you, leaving you messages. So
no.
Listen, nobody was interested in those signs. No, nobody. Like you can tell from the voting.
So you run for sheriff, but the story is a little bit hairy, right? Because they let you go as a deputy. Is that right? And your wife at the time is a sergeant, and they let you both go. And is that before you run for sheriff?
Wow.
No, that's actually while I'm running. So long story short is that it is. So long story short is that when I got involved as an investigator, I threw myself into everything in the sheriff's office, just like, what I would do in anything in life. I want to know everything about it. Everything. So I was fortunate to be a part of budget meetings. I was fortunate, and I took notes. I took notes on different numbered accounts, and I knew the budget front and back. And I was in a particular meeting where, and I'll make this really quick, is there's 4 parts to the Alachua County Sheriff's budget. And one of the parts is the jail. The jail is contracted with the county. So the county would pay the sheriff's office at that time $28 million a year to take care of the jail. And you can't, because they're contracted, you can't take any of that money out of that contract or that allotted $28 million and share it with any part of the other parts of the budget. It's separate. It's a separate item. And I found out that they were siphoning money out of that budget and buying expensive vehicles for command staff and $100,000 Tahoes with heated seats in Gainesville, Florida. Whoever needs heated leather seats, and I found that out. And so instead of bringing it to the sheriff's attention because I knew she was a part of it, I went to the county commission. And I was honest. I told her everything what I found. Here's the documentation. Here's it all. Here it is, right here, plain sight. And I thought, hey, being honest, being the truth, that would work in my favor. No, not so much. The sheriff had a lot of power, and she spun some things in the paper because the Gainesville Sun and her are tight, and they spread some really untrue rumors about myself and my wife, and so. My wife at that time, and so she had me fired, and then of course, fast forward 5 years later, I go to federal court, and I beat her in federal court for wrongful termination, and so and the Alachua County Sheriff's Office and the county had to pay me some money. So, I mean, it all worked out in the end, and on top of that, the Florida Supreme Court came back and said yes, she was wrong, she was taking money out of the budget. So all that came in, but Zac Zedalis getting in trouble or Zac whatever BS they wanted to put was on page 1. All that other stuff was like page 15, so no one ever read it. But it is what it is. I mean, it's I've always been raised to do the right thing, even though I'm not perfect. I've made plenty of mistakes. But when it comes to, if you work at, and I'm not knocking Target or Walmart, but when you work for law enforcement, and your job is to uphold the law and be honest and be transparent, I believe that. I really believe that. And that's how I try to live my life. And when I thought that being honest would be the right thing to do, and it is the right thing to do, it just sometimes it takes years for the right stuff to come out. I mean, anything you look at, anything in presidential stuff, and I know we're not getting into politics, but you'll see 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years down the road, you'll see the backstory. It'll come out on Netflix, and you'll see all this stuff that happened. And, like even that documentary with Urban Meyer and the Gator stuff. I mean, there was so much not said.
Oh yeah,
and that what happened.
A lot left out.
and of course Meyer and Urban had the editing rights. He wasn't going to let that stuff come out because it came out so he wasn't going to let that stuff come out. But the truth is eventually told, and of course when it happens 5, 6, 10 years from now, no one cares because so many other things have happened since then.
Sure.
So it's just kind of everybody's niche in history and everybody's niche in their own story. And I fought the good fight and lost, but. You know what? I do it all over again because it was the right.
You won
thing
in
to
the
do.
end.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah, I won in the end.
race.
And this is fascinating. When do we see your movie on Netflix? And who's going to play you? This is great.
Well, speaking, great segue of movies. Zach goes from running for sheriff to Hollywood actor.
Oh, it just gets better.
Your IMDb credits. I mean, we're talking serious stuff here. The Walking Dead, Stranger Things.
Wow.
Godzilla, King of Monsters. Space Pups, which my boys will probably see this year. How do you go from running for sheriff to Hollywood actor?
Well, I wouldn't get so far into Hollywood. I've done everything I can, and it's only been 5 years, and it takes time to learn the craft, make the connections in the business, and who knows how big the wave will be, if it's a big wave at all. But I know that I'm doing everything I can to work in that business, and I've been very fortunate on different projects. And like anything else, there's so many things that we've shot, and you get edited out, and so I can't wait to see it, and then you see it, it's like one line. Like, wait a minute, I did like 30, more than that, and so you learn, you learn the hard way, you figure stuff out, but. As you meet people in the business, you realize that there's a lot of people with the same story, that you just have to keep on working, and then you might hit a big break, you might not, but I'm hitting it from every angle. So we've got a screenplay that I've written that's in production, that we're working on. We've got other screenplays working. So I'm working on it from the writing angle. I'm working on it from the acting side and producing side. So we're doing everything we can to be relevant in the business. I'm not saying it's going to work out, but I know that at the end of the day, I can always say there's not a day that goes by that I haven't done everything I can possibly do to make it work and making a living doing it. So at least it's paying the bills,
How's that work? You're not living in LA, right? So how is that working?
So we've got a place in Atlanta, which Atlanta is kind of like the southern Hollywood now.
It is, yeah.
So
it's cheaper to shoot here, right?
Yes,
absolutely. The tax credits are a lot better. A lot of the Hollywood actors are actually skipping out from LA, and they're moving to South Dakota, they're moving to Texas, they're moving to North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, those areas. I haven't heard anybody moving to Florida, but they're moving because it's lower taxes. A lot of the agents and their businesses have also kind of gone all through Zoom now, so they don't have to pay for brick and mortar anymore. They can just work from the house and work on their computers and do everything from online. All the auditions usually aren't in person anymore. They're all, unless you're doing a screen test for a studio, they're all pretty much over either Zoom or they're doing it on self-tape. So a lot of this can be done remotely now. And so that's been a benefit for us because now we don't have to be in LA or we don't have to always be in Atlanta. We can kind of shoot around and travel. So it's been a blessing not have to worry about living in LA because LA is no fun.
Now, what's the most famous actor you've seen on a set or worked with on a project that we would know?
Right now, famously, we just finished up a Christmas movie in January called Red One with The Rock and Chris Evans.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
That will come out, and it should come out this fall. It just depends on with the SAG, because I know they can't really push it, but I think it was supposed to come out this November. If they still push it, depends on the SAG strike, but it's going to come out on Amazon anyway, so it won't be in the movie theaters. But Amazon did a nice little deal with them. But being on the set with The Rock was fun. He's a real nice guy. Chris Evans is a nice guy.
Captain America.
J.K. Simmons is in that movie.
Oh,
J.K.
cool.
Simmons is a great guy.
Yeah, I love him from Oz.
Probably my favorite guy though was Charles Dance. Charles Dance from Game of Thrones.
Lannister.
Wait, I love Game of Thrones, but I don't recognize that name.
He was the old Lannister,
the father.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Very cool.
Yes.
You might remember him from Last Action Hero. Being
And the
bad
Golden
guy
Child.
Yes, the Golden Child.
Yes.
Absolutely. That'd be our era, right? We'd be watching the Golden Child with Eddie Murphy and the Last Action Hero.
Excellent.
But what a cool guy, man. That guy was such a solid guy. We've kind of become pen pals. So he's so funny because we were on that set and Godzilla King of the Monsters and it was my first, other than doing theater, it was my first kind of movie. And I kind of got bumped up from, I was just an extra, and then they bumped me up to full cast. And we're sitting there, and he's like, Zach, what do you got next? What are you doing next? He goes, because I'm going to South Africa, and we're going to shoot some things in South Africa. I go, Charles, I'm going to try not to sleep in my car tonight. I'm just trying to make it, man. I'm just trying to make it. And I think he appreciated that honesty and the fact that he struggled for a long time and then made it. And it's just that's that business, man. You just keep at it and maybe eventually you hit it big and you may not hit it big. I mean, hitting it big like The Rock and like Jerry Seinfeld, that's stupid big. I mean, that's just crazy big. But being able to be a working actor where people kind of recognize you, that's attainable. It's just it's timing. It's what things you work on, projects you work on, and luck.
So my son, he turns 9 next month, and he's been in theater. He's been in some performance plays for the county. What advice would you give me for him if he wanted to pursue that more professionally?
And it depends on what he wants to do. If he wants to do theater, then that's a different focus, and it's a lot bigger. Theater is so much bigger. It's like right now I have a contract with Disney, and we do the Indiana Jones stunt show, and so it's so fun because you get to perform in front of 2,000 people, 5 times a day.
Yeah.
And so the great part about that is everything's big. So your reactions are bigger, and when you do on-screen work, everything's so much smaller, so much slower, so much smaller. Micro, expressions are important. And for him, I would just, decide what he wants to do. Continue to work in theater and get, build his craft and network with people. And I suggest he directs, even at a young age, direct your own movies. Get on your iPhone and shoot things that you want. Be creative. Write something and write a story. And just because when you start doing that, you start seeing things from other perspectives. So when I started writing, I became a better actor because I said, okay, this is what I want out of a writer, but this is what I want out of an actor. And you kind of able to see it through different lenses, and you get to see how it works. Now, whether you're good at it or not, that's a different story.
Sure,
but
of course.
At least you get to experience both.
I have to circle back to something. Dr. Henry Jones Jr. is my favorite fictional character. So Captain Obvious here. If you're in the Indiana Jones stunt show, am I assuming you're the big German whose face meets the propeller from Raiders of the Lost Ark?
That is one of the roles I play, yes.
Oh, excellent casting for that.
Thank you. Fortunately for me, I've been trained in almost every role there, other than the Marion role and then some of the tumbling roles. But all the acting and then the assistant directors and those stuff, I do those as well. But the main role that I'm contracted for is that bad German who gets chopped up by
that's so
plank. No longer a German though. You can't say German at Disney. You can just say
okay.
We're just a mechanic. That's all we are.
Fair enough.
Yeah, thanks, Alec Baldwin, for shooting that person on Russ. Now we can't even use any guns. So it's like, come on, Alec, come on.
Speaking of being physical, with your size, you ever think about giving pro wrestling a shot, or had you ever in your life thought about that?
You guys don't know this? Oh.
Uh-oh.
So
here we go.
Walking off the field in 2001, getting beat by Tennessee. It was senior night, which I don't know why we had senior night, because this is the last game of the season. I get it. But you don't have senior night when you're playing Tennessee. I would just skip senior night because it gets emotional with your family. And I don't want to talk to them anyway. I want to go play. So I'd cut like a Z in my beard. I had like bleach blonde hair. I was, a complete idiot. And I'm walking out after the game, completely depressed because we lost, end of the career, in the season. And Ric Flair, who's a huge Gator fan and friends with Coach Collins, he comes up to me because that's back in the day when at our stadium you could park underneath the stadium and people would like tailgate underneath there and hang out if you were friends of the family, friends of the coaches. Yeah. Now it's all built up. It's just like the weight room's there now. But he walked up to me and goes, "Hey man, you would make a great wrestler. Are you let me know if you're ever interested." And he gave me his number. So before I went into physical therapy and did that stuff, I gave Canadian football a try. I went up there and it was in July. It was like I don't know, it was like June or July. It was June. It was like 32 degrees in Winnipeg.
Oh.
I was like,
definitely not in Florida anymore.
My helmet didn't fit. It was cold, and I you know, and up there, Canadians are the ones who play O-line. Like you don't have like the Americans are the ones because they do it this way because they have unions. The Americans play like the skill positions, and the Canadians get like the D line and the O line, you know, mainly. And so I was taking a guy's spot who was Canadian, and they were all cool to me when I was second team. But when I became first team, it was like, yeah, no more calls. They weren't buddy with me anymore. So I was like, all right, well, it's enough. Listen, I'm not helping out here. Plus my helmet didn't fit. It was awful. Anyway, so I get back and I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't want to really work for a living. I want to do something fun. So I call Ric Flair. I go up to Ohio Valley Wrestling, which is actually they have right now. OVW has this. I don't know if it's on Netflix or they're having some kind. They're doing a documentary on it right now of what's going on right now because I think Al Snow's running it in Louisville, Kentucky. So I go up to Louisville, Kentucky, OVW, and Ric Flair gets me set up a tryout with Big Boss Man.
Oh, sure.
So Big Boss Man. And then Danny Davis, who's who was running at the time.
Danny Davis, that shady referee.
Yeah, we remember this.
Yeah. Danny Davis, he's running at the time. Big Boss Man is there. And so we get in the ring. And mind you, I've never wrestled. I've watched it. I love watching it, but I've never wrestled before. Didn't wrestle in high school. I lifted weights because we didn't have a wrestling team. And so we get in the ring, and we lock up. So you go up and lock up. And it looks really hard, but it's so light. Because these guys are beat up, but it's so light when you lock up. Like, you put the hand behind the head. Yep. It looks like it's hard, but it is literally so soft. But it looks difficult. And then they can take their hand that's on your neck, and they steer you which way you want to go. And we lock up for the first time, and he steers me around, and he goes, "Oh man, you're not stiff." He goes, "You got a good touch." I was like, "Oh, all right, cool." He said, "Now we're going to do some bumps." So they put me in the ring, and they put a mat. They put like a pad in the ring. And I just go, "Sir, am I going to have that pad when I'm really wrestling?" He goes, "No." I said, "Then take it out." He's like, "Okay." And so we did some bumps, didn't use a pad. He's like, "Okay, I got a contract. I got a contract from WWE at that time for $1,000 a week." I moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and I lived. Now being a cop now, I wasn't a cop then. I know I lived next to a crack dealer. Now he was a really nice guy, great guy. But I was like, man, this guy, there's always people over his house, and they're always but they were smoking crack. But whatever. I mean, I lived in the ghetto in Louisville, Kentucky, because that's all I could afford. And we would go and we had practice for OVW. We'd have practice 2 hours a day from 12 to 2. And we got in there, and at that time, this is before the developmental league. This is OVW was kind of like the minor leagues of WWE. Brock Lesnar just left. Matt Morgan was there when I was there. Rob Conway, some of these names that you may not know. Dave Bautista came back down to rehab an injury and work on his persona when he was there. But all these guys had been trained, and here I am not knowing what I'm doing. I've got a contract, so automatically I've got a target on my back. Like, who's this guy? I almost felt like I was back at UF. Like, oh, this guy's going to come in and start. Oh yeah, we'll see. Everybody was really, really nice, but no one was going to help me. Sure. Like, no. And I almost wish, because there was like as an athlete, you think, okay, let's work on this move today. And then by the end of the day, let's have this move down. And then tomorrow we'll work on another move. And so in 2 months, you'll know how to wrestle. It didn't work that way. Had a lot of guys who, they just get in the ring and they say, just go for it. Like, just go for what? Just go for what? I don't know what I'm doing. I saw so many injuries in a span of a year. I mean, people blowing their backs out, breaking their necks. Sure. Kurt Angle's brother, Eric Angle, was there. And he was just jacked out of his mind. Like, he blew his tricep. I don't know, running into the ring, he blew a tricep. Like, how do you do that? You're running your arms. But I think he was chemically enhanced a little bit. But anyway, long story short, that I wish they would have said, "Hey, listen, man, go pay for a school and come back in 6 months and be ready to go." They didn't do that. So long story short, I go up there. I don't know anything about the business. I'm just watching. I'm trying to learn, but it's so difficult when you don't do it. And so we go to Dunkirk, Indiana, and what you're required to do on the weekends is they would wrestle. So you'd practice during the week, and then you'd wrestle. And then we went to, we'd always go set the ring up and, be the grunt work of the place, and you worked it that way. We went to Dunkirk, Indiana, and we're in an elementary school cafeteria. And we have a ring set up, and somebody gets like sick or hurt. And they're like, "Zach, you're in. I'm like, I'm in doing what? What do you want me to do? They're like, you're going to wrestle. I'm like, I don't, no, you guys don't understand. I don't know what I'm doing. They're like, no, you're going to wrestle. I said, okay. So all I had for an outfit was a pair of cut-off Florida Gator practice pants, some combat boots, and a white wife beater. And so I'm standing behind this PVC pipe frame with trash bag curtains, right? Standing behind that. We're talking about like real high class here, right? And we have an announcer who's like, hey, man, what's your name? I'm like, my name's Zach. No. What's your stage name? I'm like, dude, I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't have a stage name. What are you talking about? All right. So he introduced me. I'm supposed to be the baby face. And the incredible Zach. What? So I don't pop. I kind of slowly like slide out of the curtains because I'm so embarrassed. I've got 7-year-old kids wearing racing jackets booing me, telling me that I suck. And instead of turning heel, I'm just going, I know I suck. I'm terrible. I know I'm awful. And so I get in the ring and I'm fighting this guy who's supposed to be heel. And we lock up. He's like, body slam. I said, okay, body slam. So I body slam him. I'm like, oh, awesome. It worked out well. This is like the most I've done in wrestling right now. It's been like 6 months. It's the most I've done. And he looks at me down, and I go, what now? He goes, do something. I'm like, do something. So I kick him, but my heel really kicked him in the face. Not hard, but hard enough where he got up, and it was really on for like 2 minutes. He was really trying to kick my butt for like 2 minutes. And I'm like, I'm sorry. And I'm getting booed. And he was the heel, and I was the baby face, and they booed me. Oh, they booed me out of the ring, man. He ended up winning. They talked out, and I ended up, obviously that was my last wrestling match. And that ride home from Dunkirk, Indiana, was the most, because we all had to ride together. I was in the back seat. No one spoke to me. No one said a word to me. And I was like, "What do you expect me to do? I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing." So that was pretty much after about a year of that. And I saw some really major injuries. I was like, man, I'm not learning. I'm just wasting time here for you guys, and I'm not learning. And it's funny, if I would have been 2 or 3 years later, it would have been a whole different ball game, because it would have been, you've been trained and they would have really taken you through it. And unfortunately, I missed that. But it is what it is. But I have heard things like Titus, Thaddeus Bullard, who's Titus O'Neil. He's like the face of the WWE for some things, but I've talked to a couple guys that said that he was kind of stiff when he wrestled, but he just has a great face, and so they've used him in Tampa. He's done a really good job for the WWE, being kind of a mouthpiece for them, and setting up with a local PD and doing those things. So good for Thaddeus to be able to continue on in that business. I just wish I would have gotten to it a little bit later. It may have been a different story, but you know what? I feel pretty good physical wise, and I know a lot of those guys who wrestle, they're pretty beat up.
Yeah. All right, Zach. Well, man, I feel like we could talk to you for hours, but we're gonna have to end the show. So we usually end the show in a bit, and we're gonna do a 5 for 5. And what this is I give you 5 of your former teammates, and we're gonna throw a little twist here now that the strike is over. You're gonna be a star of your own sitcom, right? So I'm gonna give you 5 of your former teammates. You got to tell me what part they have in your new sitcom. What character they're going to play. Are you ready for this?
All right.
Number 1, Doug Johnson. We got him coming up on the show next month.
Future friend of the show?
Yeah. Oh, man. He's coming up on the show. Let's see. You know what? He'll be the town smartass is what he'll be. He'll be a smartass. Smart. We can say smart butt or whatever the case would be. That's what Doug is. Doug's a funny guy. He's very smart aleck.
All right.
Okay. Number 2, Terry Jackson. He's also coming up on the show.
Future friend of the show.
Terry would be probably the sweet talking lover boy.
The ladies' man.
Ladies' man.
Yeah. All right. Number 3, Mike Pearson.
Oh man, Mike. Oh, he's such a good guy. He's such a good guy. But if you see his before pictures and after pictures now, I would think he'd be the town crackhead. But he's still pretty. But I'd say he's he'd be.
Did he live next to you in Kentucky?
No, he did not.
Oh, okay.
He never made a visit there that I saw. I don't know. I think I would have noticed a 7-foot tall white guy walking over there. He definitely would be like the mayor. He's kind of one of those guys who's likable, and he's kind of got his hands in a lot of pots. So he'd be like the mayor, like the mayor of the not corrupt mayor, but he'd be a good mayor, I guess.
Okay, number 4, Aaron Walker.
Another friend of the show.
Oh, Aaron would be the it must be political. Aaron would be like the Trumpster. He'd be the Trumpster of the group. Maybe that's not the wrong say to say that. He'd be the very right wing guy. That's what he would be.
He'd be the guy with the red hat.
Gotcha, the red hat.
Exactly.
Okay. Number 5, Freddie T.
Fred Taylor. Oh man. Great guy as well. Heck of a player, as everyone knows. Fred T would be like the crime boss. He'd be like the crime boss of the show.
I like it.
Okay.
You wouldn't want to cross Fred T.
Okay.
Very, very conniving.
I like it. Stringer Bell.
I would say conniving. Fred T's a smart guy, street smart.
Okay.
And I just think he'd be one of those guys you wouldn't want to cross because he'd come back and get you.
I like it.
Did you have a favorite running back to block for? I know you blocked for a bunch of the good ones. Great ones.
You know what? The thing about all the teammates, honestly, is that I could never pick a. I mean, my closest friend is Travis McGriff, and we're close friends and a great guy. You know, we stay close to this day. But I have no negative memories about Florida. Every guy, every running back, every receiver, regardless if they were good or bad or had a great career, got injured. I mean, I just, you want the best for them, all of them. I give the guys a hard time on this text string all the time about all of them. I mean, I'm the I'm the straw that stirs the drink on that text string. But I wish the best for all of them. I enjoyed blocking for every single one, and there was nobody that stands above. I mean, they were all great, and there were some that were better, who had better careers than others. But I can tell you that in that locker room, and the great thing about football and the great thing about athletics is it crosses over every cultural background. It goes through everybody's on the team, and you don't look at race, you don't look at who's better, who's taller. You just look at you're all the team, and you're there to work. And that was probably the best thing about playing there, is that to this day, any of those guys, I mean, other than saying, a couple of them, if they called me and said they have a body and they need to bury it, I'd help a couple of them. And I wouldn't help everybody in that way. But if they called and said, "Hey, man, I need your help in some way," I would help all of them, except for the body thing. I'd only help a couple of that because they'd be kind of. But every single one of them, anybody, you name them, I would help them out any way I could, because they're all really good people, and they just were really, really fun to play with.
All right, Zach, man, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure to have you on. We watched you play live there from the seats in the swamp. Your entire time there, big fans, and it's awesome to see your dynamic careers afterwards and how successful, no matter what you do, how successful that you're becoming at each of them. So awesome. Best wishes in everything you do in the future and the acting thing as well. Looking forward to your next project. You said was Red One. Red One is the next project. Should be out. I think probably should be this Christmas.
We'll be watching out for that.
So on Amazon.
Yeah. You should have your agent reach out to Dos Equis, because you might be the most interesting man in the world. You got the resume.
Listen, I believe to your from your lips to whoever's ears.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
All right, Zach. Thank you so much for your time, man. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you both. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I love all of our friends of the show, but I think that might be my favorite episode yet. I mean, my goodness, he really is a Renaissance man, the most interesting man in the world. Everything from wrestling, Canadian football, Indiana Jones, running for office, SWAT team. My God, like that is a movie I would watch.
Yeah, man, he's done so much after football, and it's all really, really cool. And he's been so successful at everything. So I wouldn't be surprised if he, changes his career 2-3 more times.
Don't blink. He's got a new job.
And I didn't know. Yeah, didn't even know. I was Googling to prepare for the show, and you put in his name, Zac Zedalis, and then you get a Gator football picture. You get
running for office.
He's doing a speech running for office. He's in his officer uniform as a deputy. He's dressed up as a zombie killer. He's
yeah.
It's like wait, is this the right Zach I'm looking for? And yeah, it's him. He's done it all.
Wow. Well, what's cool is with him in the acting world, we could totally Kevin Bacon in some Gator to excellence now. So,
All right, let's roll right into our 2 bits. What do you got, Sid?
Well, I got to say, resilience is what jumps out at me, because it seemed like whatever came up, he just kind of took an experience and shifted to the next one. overcomes major injuries, overcomes mishandling by the medical staff, by the university, mishandling that. And
how horrific is that?
Years, and then he comes back and excels and is on one of the best ones, certainly one of our favorite Gator teams of all time. And no,
absolutely.
I just his journey was just fascinating. Talking about going up to Canada and then doing the wrestling and police and now the acting and the stunt show. It's just fascinating. Yeah, I can't wait to see what he does next. That is very cool. He represents our university well. Resilience. That man is
very good,
very talented.
Mine's a short one because it sticks out in my mind. Is that he is the only player to have ever been designated as a fourth-team All-American. Was that right?
Yes. That's the kind of insight you can only find here on the All for the Gators podcast. Yes.
I mean, he joked around about it, but saying it's like getting a 6th place ribbon or whatever on field day or whatever he said.
But he got the ribbon.
But I'll tell you what.
I'll take it.
Sid, if I was a Florida Gator football player and I was voted 4th-team All-American, I would have that tattooed on me. I would have that engraved in pro wrestling championship belts all over my house. I would have that on my license plate. I would, you know what I mean?
Well, maybe now Zach will, now that you've inspired him to take it up a notch. He'll listen to the episode.
Absolutely, man. It's been a pleasure. Once again, it's allforthegatorspodcast.com. 4 is the number 4. You go there, you can check out every Gator great we have scheduled coming up, and we are jam-packed for the rest of the year with Gator greats. And you can listen to any show we've ever done. It's right there, live. You don't have to worry about what platform to go to. If you're on a computer or on your cell phone, you can do it right through our webpage, or you can do it on your favorite platform. Either way, we're on anywhere you get your podcasts. Allforthegatorspodcast.com. Sid, it's been a pleasure.
Always, my friend. Great show. Go Gators.
Go Gators.